Sara Davison, welcome to the Graph Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and see us. Really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You are the most acclaimed guest we've ever had. I'm
very,
yeah, no, 100%. I'll tell. And the reason why is you are a 5 times bestseller author, podcaster, an award-winning coach. You've been on Good Morning Britain, Women's Hour as well, and that is all to do with what is known as your link as the divorce coach.
Yeah.
But it's way more than that we're going to get into. It empowers people to take back control after heartbreak. This subject for me is a little bit personal as well. So, I was talking to the guys before about statistics of divorce within the UK in particular. It's 40% of all marriages end in divorce, unfortunately. It's way bigger for kind of couples in general. I've not been divorced yet. I think my wife might jump in with a yet when she hears this. But I was subject to 2 divorces when I was younger. My parents got divorced. My dad remarried. They got divorced. And that was, obviously, I saw various different pain points of that. Yeah, you've gone on and written some incredible books just around this subject. But if I can take you back right to the start, how did Sara Davison become the divorce coach?
It's not really a very sexy job title, is it? I think I found this work through my own personal experience. I've been coaching for 15 years. I was married. We had a son who was 1 at the time when I literally found out overnight that not only did my husband not want to be married to me anymore, he was madly in love with somebody else. And it didn't help that she was 12 years younger than me. That doesn't really help.
They're never older, are they? If you marry, I'm married the 60-year-old clean.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
No, and she was beautiful as well, which never helped.
No.
But also, I found out within a couple of weeks that she was actually pregnant as well. And my entire life changed overnight. In that moment, everything I knew to be true just changed. My future that I planned. We worked together as well. We had 200 staff, an office in London, an office in Sydney, Australia. So it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. I was devastated. I did a lot of that ugly crying on the bathroom floor, phoning my mum at 2 a.m. because she was the only one that would answer, but bless her, she did, night after night. And overnight, I was a single mum, never saw that coming, never dreamt of who wanted to sign up to that? Nobody. And I thought my life was over, because everything was so wrapped around it. It was my business partner, it was my husband, it was love of my life. I thought my soulmate, father to my child. So overnight, everything changed. For 2 or 3 months, I was just a wreck. And they also moved into the same development that I was living in, into one of their penthouse apartments. And me and my son were on the first floor. And she started working in our business as well. And so I felt like there was no escape. I was literally watching my husband madly in love moving on in front of my eyes with somebody else. So I decided to go to our Sydney office because I thought, other side of the world, other side of the planet, that's going to help. And I suppose it did in a way, but I went out there just for a couple of weeks with my son and I realised that I'd taken all my problems with me, obviously. And I'd gone for a walk one day. I was in the office. People were coming up to me, super kind. And I think if anyone's been through a breakup, they'll know this. People want to be kind. They won't know what to say. So sometimes they won't say anything, which is a little bit awkward because there's kind of the elephant in the room that no one's talking about. But then when they do say things, it can be well-meaning. But for me, it was, I found out they were having an affair 6 months ago. I'm so glad you know now. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't know because you're kind of my boss and it's kind of awkward. And I understood that. But every time from so many people, it was just so painful for me. And this particular day, I'd taken a break. I'd gone down to Balmoral Beach. I think you know it, do you? Sun was shining. Everyone around me living their best life, playing, jogging, couples hand in hand, and yet there I was crying again, sobbing, like feeling like it was a physical pain, because I think heartbreak does feel physical even though it's emotional. And it was that point where I suddenly thought, what am I doing? what am I doing? It was a real pivotal moment where a cockatoo actually flew down, and they're like beautiful white birds with this yellow plume. We don't get them. We don't get them where I live in England anyway. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm crying my eyes out. I'm racked with pain. Enough. Literally enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. And because I've been coaching, I knew there was a way to change how I felt. And I'd look for help. But therapy didn't really touch the sides with the more practical side that I was dealing with. Like, how do you hand your child over for a weekend to your ex and their new pregnant girlfriend? That is indescribable pain for me, but for any parent, I think, when you're having to not see your child, your baby, and hand over in those circumstances when you didn't sign up for that. So there were practical things that I was really struggling with. So I decided in that moment, screw you, watch this. And that was really a defining moment. It came into my head. I was like, I'm not going to be defined by this pain, by this old story of I'm not good enough. Why did you pick her over me? What's wrong with me? Why don't you love me? Enough of that. Screw that. Watch this. And I don't quite know how, but I'm going to take my power back and I'm going to find a way through. I'm going to take the skills that I have as a coach for 15 years and I'm going to apply them to this divorce process, which I have no idea about. It's terrifying. I don't understand half the jargon my lawyer is talking to me using. I don't understand it. But also, I refuse to stay a victim. So whatever I'm going to do, it's going to be, watch this. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and I'm going to keep going. And that's when I had the idea to write my first book, Uncoupling, because I created these tools and I was trying them out on me. Some of them didn't work very well. Some of them worked really well. And I used them with my son as well as he was growing up. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book and share this because it could help other people if it helps one other person. And that was Uncoupling.
So Uncoupling, How to Survive and Thrive After Breakup and Divorce. This is the first book. So is this, Sara, if you don't mind me saying, is this this feels then like a bit more of a journal almost. You're living and breathing this as you're writing it, right? You're going through this. Yeah,
I mean, it was I can't get up in the morning. I had to because of my son, because he was only one. So that was a real leverage for me. But, you know, when he was away or with his dad, or some days I just felt like I couldn't, even though he was there. So I had to come up with things. So I was sort of using myself as a guinea pig to practice things. So I was thinking, okay, well, 5-star jumps is going to change how I feel. I don't want to do 5-star jumps, but if I make myself, is it going to help? And I'll be like, oh, actually, that actually helps. Or, you know, if I stay in bed today and just bring my son in the bed with me, is that going to help? That doesn't really help. So, you know, I was figuring it out, but also because I've been trained as a coach for so long, there were things I knew that if I put into practice and forced myself to do them, that it would, small steps over time is a leap forward. And that is what made the difference. Every day doing one thing differently. Doing one thing to make myself feel better and then honing those as I went. You know, sometimes you feel like something and sometimes you don't. Yeah, I realised that we all have coping mechanisms, but we're never taught them. Like Mrs. Brown at school doesn't sit us down and go, right, Ben, right, Sarah, we're going to look at today on, well, it was a blackboard for me. It's probably a
Today's
whiteboard.
Subject is adversity.
Yeah. We're going to choose your coping mechanism for how you deal with the stressful situations that are going to come up in life for you. So who here is going to use red wine? Who here is going to choose partying till 3 a.m? Who here is going to choose exercise? We're never taught that. And actually kids today more than ever need healthy coping mechanisms, because at the moment with teenagers turning to, well, there's vaping, there's self-harming, and suicide is on the rise for teenagers. If they'd had education on, well, consciously choose our coping mechanisms. So, you know, look, drinking is going to make you feel bad the next day. If we'd had that, we would have maybe not made the same decisions or been more in control of what we were doing and how we felt. And I think a lot of people don't realise that bad things are going to happen to us, but it's not what happens to us in life that defines us. It's actually what you do about it that makes you the person you become. So going back to that pivotal moment on Balmoral Beach, I could have stayed in that pain and that could have been a grey cloud that carried around with me forever. Or as everyone gets to, there's that decision moment where you get a choice to step up. And it's never too late. You can make that decision at any point, but you can take your power back even when you feel powerless and go, you know what, I'm going to take this back and I'm going to do something about it, even if you're not sure how. And I think with me, it was, I don't really know how, but I've got some skills here and I've definitely going through hell. So if it makes it a little bit better and I can learn something and then eventually I could pass that on, then actually maybe with hindsight, that was actually a gift. It's impossible to see it in the time, though. Yeah. If you'd have said that to me when I was crying on the bathroom floor, I probably would have just told you to get out. But with time, you can see actually that actually happened for a reason. That if you choose, you can learn from that and go on and become stronger from it.
When people come to you, Sara, in the first initial, I don't know, maybe it's those 2-3 months. When I've spoken to people who have been through divorce, and it's a little bit different in your circumstance to maybe others, isn't it? I mean, that's a terrible thing that happened. Your ex-partner, that's not the way to treat people. But people go through divorce in a structured way. They come to a decision as a couple. More amicable. But what do people initially come to you with? What's their overriding "I need help" with?
I think it's a confused overwhelm and just total fear. Usually, the heartbreak. There's a question I get asked, like, when will I start to feel better?
Yeah.
When's
this going to go?
Yeah. When do I get to go, okay, I'm done, because they're done or they're moving on. And even if you're amicable, there's usually one person in that couple that's just a little bit further down the line, a little bit more okay with that decision than the other. So, and I work with individuals, so it'll be one person that will come to me. So it's usually the person that's like, they kind of seem like they're moving on and I'm getting left behind, or when will the heartbreak end, or when will I start to feel better? And it is, again, when you decide, because as soon as you decide, okay, I need to start making steps forward, then there's things you can implement straight away.
Yeah,
absolutely. The other biggest fear I see is not being loved again. Because
that makes me sad, you just saying those words, somebody feeling that way. I never thought about that before, actually. I thought they'd be so consumed with I'm breaking up. Maybe the fear of not being loved, or that happening again.
It's the number one human need, is love and connection. So we need that for survival. That's something that we will look for over anything else. So when we lose that from our intimate partner, very often we feel like we'll never be loved again. And that's where people become quite vulnerable and date anyone with a pulse, or it's the first person to show them a sign of affection without actually doing some of the work, because it's that fear of, I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to be lonely. But actually, and this is the case for a lot of people, but most people who are in happy relationships, healthy relationships, probably won't even have thought about this. You will be lonelier in an unhappy relationship than you will ever be on your own on the sofa watching Netflix on a Saturday night.
Can you expand on that a bit?
Because if you're with somebody that you are in a partner with, there's an expectation of a dynamic where you feel loved, you feel reassured, you feel valued, you feel validated, you've got that, someone's got your back. But when you're with someone who doesn't give you any of that, and you're constantly striving for it, you need it, you're asking for it, you're behaving in a way to try and get that, and it might be that you're cooking a nice meal, or it might be that you're trying to have a conversation, but it's not a two-way. The loneliness and the isolation you feel then is far worse when you're being rejected by somebody that you love than when you're sat on the sofa on a Saturday night and your mates are out, they've already booked up other things, and you're watching the next series on Apple or whatever because there's no one else around. It's very different. It's very different. You can be alone, but loneliness in a relationship is very difficult for people to manage.
Because I guess you're kind of exposing yourself even more than you would do if you were on your own, right? You kind of sat within your own space, your own head. Whereas if you're projecting and trying to not entice in a sexual way, but entice somebody to give you affection, right? To feel that love, that connection. Yeah, that could be really draining.
It's that rejection and sense of not being good enough or not being worthy enough. What's wrong with me? That's that negative spiral. Whereas if your friends have booked to go something else, then you just didn't plan well. It's a very different thing. But also you can get that love and connection from a dog, a gerbil, your friends and family. There's other ways that you can get love and connection. So a lot of people will be scared to jump into a relationship, and that's understandable. And that's another question I get asked: when will I ever be able to trust again? And that's a really interesting question, because I don't believe you should ever have to trust again. The thing that we need to learn is to learn to trust ourselves, not somebody else. We're not learning to trust somebody and give our trust away and hope and pray they're not going to hurt us like maybe the last person did. It's about doing the work so we learn to trust ourselves to make better decisions on who we partner up with in our life.
Yeah. Do you also deal with couples, Sara?
I don't work with couples.
Okay.
No, there's a lot of people that do, like marriage therapists and counsellors and things, but that's not really my line.
So then where individuals have come to you, do you ever kind of identify, there's not, blame's obviously not the right word, but do you ever, is there any common traits where you look and go, this is a repetitive thing that's happened in a relationship and this is why it's broken down? Is there any headlines that you see that you're like, if you'd have only X, what do you see from that? I
think we're all programmed sometimes to repeat the same patterns because they feel safe. But safe is ironic. Like sometimes when you're in a toxic relationship, what we find is that very often we'll repeat the same pattern. We'll go for the same chaos, the same hot, cold. Do they love me? Don't they love me? Are they going to be nice today? Are they in a good mood or a bad mood? That sort of toxic cycle that we're in an unhealthy relationship can be quite addictive, but also it's familiar. And when it's familiar, it feels safe. But the irony is it's not safe at all, but it's just what we know. So it's learning to educate yourself that, there's a whole learning to be done when you come out of a relationship. Because if you don't, life has a funny way of teaching us the same lessons over and over again until we go, okay, I'm learning it. I'm banking that lesson. I'm not going to make that same decision again or repeat the same behavior. Sometimes we think we have a certain type, and so therefore we repeat the same pattern with that type. And I think it fundamentally comes down to one main thing. We all know what we want from a potential partner. We'll know what we're attracted to physically, chemistry-wise. Is it tall, dark, handsome? Is it short, blonde, blue eyes? We know that, and we feel that. But most of us don't spend time thinking about what we need from a partner. That's very different. And that comes from doing the work and learning the lessons from past relationships. And if you can learn and say, do you know what? I actually need someone who is emotionally stable or kind. Our values will shift. Our values meaning what's important to us in a relationship will shift after traumatic events like a divorce or a breakup or coming out of a toxic relationship. And what that means is, maybe when we're in our 20s, if you think back to what was important to you when you were dating then.
You need shift, right? After you've been through something, for sure. Yeah,
it's more about fun and adventure and, exploring the world, those kind of things that might be top of the list in your 20s. Whereas if you've been through a divorce, especially in my case where someone had cheated on you, suddenly things like loyalty and kindness and having your back are things that are top of my list that I wouldn't have dreamt. I would have just not even considered. I mean, it would have been a given, I guess, you'd have hoped. But now that's really important if you've gone through that experience. So if you've done the work and understand, you know what, I really need this from a partner, and you combine that with what you want, then you're increasing the chances of finding someone that's going to be a more stable, fulfilling relationship with you with a higher potential for being successful. And I always say, let's create some safety nets as well, because dating is a minefield, especially when you've come out of a long relationship, you're not used to dating or flirting or any of those things. It can be terrifying. And there's enough Netflix movies out there now and documentaries on how terrifying it really can be. And you do have to be careful. So I always work with my clients to create 5 must not haves in a partner. And what that means is things that are deal breakers that, you know, if that shows up, you're out. So I had a client recently, bless her, she's so lovely. She was scared about dating. So we did this exercise and her ex had been quite rude. And she said, I don't want to date anyone that's rude. So that was her number 1 deal breaker. And so we'd been working together for a while. She said, I've got a date. I'm going out. It was in Richmond. She said, I'm going out in Richmond. He's taking me out for a drink. It was just a drink. So she went out with him. And then she updated me saying, oh, it was really nice. I really liked him. He's really attractive. I really fancy him. It's going well. We had a good chat. So I'm like, great. Okay. She said, didn't see any red flags, anything. I think I like him. I'm like, okay, great. She goes, he's going to take me for dinner next week. So I'm like, great. So at this point, as is normal, rose tinted glasses are on, but she knows she's looking for certain things and she hadn't seen it. So that was okay. So she went back for the second date, really excited. And this was dinner. So they went for dinner. And this time his food came out and apparently it was a bit cold. So he clicked his fingers at the waitress.
Please tell me this is a red flag.
And then when she came over, he didn't even look at her. She said he just gave the plate. Just, it's cold. I can't eat this. Take it away. And she said, all I could hear was your voice in my head, because rudeness was top of her list. And obviously this is classic. This is rude beyond, right? And so she said, I didn't know what to do because I know. So my motto is if any of these deal breakers come up, you deploy your parachute and you exit the building with immediate effect. And the reason...
Really? You get them to go?
Well, the reason I say that is because, especially if you come out of an unhealthy relationship, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. We want to go, oh, didn't really mean that. I mean, he said it. He said his mum thought he was really selfish, but because he's telling me that, it doesn't mean he really is. I think, you know, when he gets to know me, it'll be different. Or, you know, when she understands that, she'll be different with me. You know, that is the problem that keeps us stuck in those negative and unhealthy patterns. So we can't give second chances anymore. We're not going to risk our hearts getting broken again because we're giving someone some leeway they haven't earned. So that's why it's important to, if there's a deal breaker, it's not if their eyes are blue and you like green, not that, but if it's one of those 5 must not haves, that is a deal breaker. So she was sat at the table thinking, this isn't going to work. I don't know what I'm going to do. They finished their meal. And then she walked to the car. And it's date 2. He thinks it's going well. So he leans in to kiss her as she's getting to her car. And at that point, she turned around and she said to him, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I've got to go. Got in the car, drove away. And
pulled the parachute.
Yeah. Phoned me and said, I think I've made a mistake. And I said, okay, tell me what happened. And she explained. And I said, why do you think you've made a mistake? And she said, well, just because maybe it was just a one-off. And I said, do you really think that? She said, no, he was so rude to that waitress. So it was interesting. She said, for the rest of the meal, I just had your voice in my head, deploy parachute, exit the building. And I think the lesson here is she did really well, because before she would have just carried on. And then it would have been a few months down the line, maybe, that this behaviour would have shown up again. If it's showing up on date 2, it's going to be there as an intrinsic behaviour pattern. So she saved herself a lot of heartache and being even more involved in the relationship.
Yeah.
So it works. It does. Yeah. It's powerful. But even if she had made a mistake, was it worth the risk? And for her, it was, no, I don't want to risk my heart anymore. I want to learn.
Would you, in that circumstance, not suggest that she have told him? As in, is that lean in for a kiss is, well, hang on, can I just tell you about one of my red flags? It's this, and I found that you kind of did that really abruptly. Or do you want to avoid that?
Well, look, everyone's got to do what they feel comfortable with, right? But for me, most of my clients are dealing with coming out of toxic relationships. You cannot change them. Yeah. They are not going to change. But what you can do is you can give them information so they're 2 steps ahead of you again and hide it better next time. Yeah. So, and then by that point, you're hooked in so deep, it's even harder to get out. So it's all about learning to spot the signs and not risking your heart with somebody that is going to trample all over it. So you can't change them. So no. I would say no. Okay. And giving hope in those scenarios, for me is a little bit dangerous, because if you say, well, maybe you got it wrong, go back and give it another go, they're very manipulative and they know what they're doing. And their job is to get you hooked in very early on. So you're going to have to make these decisions early on. Otherwise, you will be hooked in.
Yeah. Yeah. How good, ratio-wise, Sara, men versus women, what percentage is it that come to see you?
Oh, in my clinic, it's probably about 50-50, to be honest. Yeah.
And so I guess my second question there is, and that's a really good example that you're giving. I'm just trying to think about from a bloke's perspective, does he have a coach on the other side of the table that says, don't be the thing that, so has that person's ex-partner said, don't be a walkover? You've been too placid. So if something's not right, you should say it. But how good are blokes at communicating with you as a coach and explain it? I mean, it's kind of the last thing that we do for numerous things. Not that I'm certainly an advocate for talking and going through it. And I think it's really, really important to kind of get that coaching. I'm just trying to think about it. I was from somebody potentially going through divorce. I think it's probably one of the last things a guy would go, I'm going to get some guidance about this. So I'm interested that you say it's 50-50.
Yeah.
What are the big differences?
I think the other alternative, and the only other alternative, is therapy. And I think a lot of men would rather go and see a coach than a therapist in these situations, in my personal experience. I'm sure there's a lot that do go and see therapy, and therapy's great as well, by the way. But the coaching that we do and that I do, and I train my coaches in my training school to do, is very results focused. So when it's not really sit down and talk about your childhood, that's not really our lane. Our lane is, right, I want to understand the full picture. I want to understand how you got into this. And let's look at some of the, communication styles, some of the issues you've had, some of the challenges along the way, so we can learn from them. But we're also moving you forward at pace. Like, this is your way to fast track your recovery, because it's not just, when you go through a breakup, it's not just about you and your ex. It's about going to work. And a lot of my male clients are professionals who are struggling to work because they've got a lot of things going on that is distracting their focus. Like, when are they going to see the kids? Are they going to stay in the family home, or are they the ones that are moving out? How are they going to lead a team? And actually, they're really heartbroken, or they're confused by their ex's behaviour. Because what the tools and techniques that I train and I share with my clients are for any human being. Doesn't matter what age, what gender, what sexuality, it doesn't matter what background. So it works for everyone, and it's very much about taking them forward. So I've had some male clients who find it a little bit difficult. I remember I had a farmer who was in his sort of 60s, late 60s.
I mean, that's the dot on the graph of who's most likely to go to coaching is up top right?
Yeah,
this is farmer 60, divorced.
And he actually was it was before COVID, so he came to my clinic then. And he was awkward, bless him. He was a lovely guy, and he was absolutely heartbroken. His wife had moved on with somebody else that he knew. And again, this is always painful. But interestingly, it wasn't him that had booked the appointment. It was his PA. And she followed me on social media because she'd gone through a breakup a few years before. And she said to him, you need to go and see Sara. And he was very resistant, I would say the word would mean. And he sort of came in and made it clear that it wasn't him that had said to him, and it was his PA. And
I've really got this mental picture of this guy halfway through lambing. This is inconvenient.
And really awkward. And I don't talk about my emotions. But at the end of the first session, he gave me a hug, and he just said, this has been amazing, and I'm really glad I came. When can I come back? But it's because he was in a position that he was in so much pain that he wanted to make changes. And because I was giving him very practical, tangible solutions. So it's how he could take control over his thoughts, his mind, that meant he couldn't sleep, and that he was almost trying to watch his wife on social media or watch her. He knew what time she'd come in because she still had to come onto the farm for various things. So that was causing harm, and it's sort of social media self-harming when you're following somebody, watching people, seeing them come in, watching their car drive down the driveway. It's hurtful, but we do it because we kind of still want to get a glimpse into their life. So it's normal. It's really normal. But how to take your power back over those self-harming behaviours, which actually keep us stuck. And it's a few simple shifts. And then another, looking at moving him forward. If you don't have anything to give you any sparkle back, it's a very dark place to be going through a breakup. So
yeah, it's key. Really interesting you say that. So I obviously gone through quite a bit of your social media and just looking at some of the helpful tips and so on and so forth. Not in a stalkery way. That sounded very creepy when I said that out loud. But just resonating exactly what you're saying. Therapy definitely has a place, does wonders for so many people, but I think kind of like reflecting on the two differences, you can almost sense, can't you, a little bit that therapy is kind of a really self-respected, self-reflection. You're doing 90% of the lifting in a therapy session and you kind of come out heavier, I think. Whereas I think what men will take from a coaching session, you touched on it there, those tangible things to go and do. And I think that would really be helpful to everybody going through that divorce scenario. Of, you said about the 5-star jumps.
Yeah.
There is going to be something that's going to take you out of that mindset that's going to feel less painful than what you're in. And I think that coaching aspect is, really important to get that guidance.
I think so. And it's something you said earlier really touched me, actually, because it's a big part of why I do what I do. Like, my son was 1 when I went through a divorce. How old were you when your parents...
I was 9 when my parents got divorced. I was 14 when my father and stepmom got divorced.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's people, divorce can damage children for absolute sure. And there's a lot of research out there on that. But I am quite controversial in the media on this point because I strongly believe it doesn't have to. It's not a given. And I think a lot of people stay in toxic relationships or unhealthy, unhappy relationships because they want to protect the kids and they don't want to put them through a divorce. But one of the best things that I've learned is how to help clients to empower their kids through the divorce because, and I know this is kind of sounding probably extremely controversial, but I believe that divorce can be a valuable life lesson for children if they have one healthy parent that can help them navigate. And let me expand on what
this is awesome. No, not at all.
What?
Not at all. But it was one of the bits that I wanted to come on to, but we're into it now. But yeah, please expand on that.
I think that as a parent, and you're a parent, we want to wrap our kids up in bubble wrap pretty much all the time, right? My son's just passed his driving test. I'm like, oh my God, can I wrap the car in bubble wrap? Is that possible?
Can it just be first and second gear?
Yeah. But, ultimately, the wheels will fall off at some point for them, excuse the pun on the car. But as far as they're not going to get into the college they want, they're going to get dumped. A friend's going to let them down, or someone's going to be unkind or rude or, God forbid, cruel, right, to them. But this is life and we can't protect them from it. And almost creating that cocoon for them doesn't help them grow. And I think we're seeing that in today's society when we're protecting kids from so much that they don't actually, in some cases, have that understanding of what to do when the wheels fall off and life doesn't work out the way. And then they turn to self-harming and even suicide, as we talked about earlier. There are ways to manage dealing with incredible stressful situations. And if divorce can be a chance for us as parents to become the role models, to show them how to cope when your life falls apart and what that can look like, you can go on to be stronger and happier and more confident, then as a parent, we'll do more for our kids than we will for ourselves. So as a coach, I often have more leverage with my clients who are really struggling if they have kids to say, look, I know it's going to be hard for you to do this, to show up at that school event or go to the parents' evening with them, or, even just do daily functions like get up and do the school run in the morning. I know that's hard, but if we swap the focus to you're doing this to help your kids, you're becoming the role model they need to see, because down the line, they're going to go through something and they're going to think, my whole world's fallen apart. I can't cope with this. Life is done. But if they've learned from watching you, mum or dad, that actually bad things happen. Yes, we go through some really tough, difficult emotions. We need not to hide them from our kids, because hiding them shows them that we just don't address those things and that we do run away and we don't admit when we're having a tough time. So we don't want to be overly emotional. We don't want to be doing the sort of snotty crying on the bathroom floor. None of that in front of them. But, you can have tears. But as long as you say, Mum's sad at the moment. Actually, I'm finding this a bit hard. I am sad. What can I do to cheer myself up? Now, by asking your kid that question, they'll say, oh, I don't know. Well, let's come up with some ideas. 5-star jumps, putting on some happy music, age appropriate, right? So, I used to, when my son was 3, we used to run around the rug in the front room. And then when the music stopped, we fell on the floor and we were laughing. And so that was one thing. Obviously, he's 17 now. That's not going to wash. But, it might be going to the gym, or it might be talking to a trusted adult that you can confide in who gives constructive advice. So age appropriate, but giving them a toolkit of coping strategies and mechanisms that are practical, that they can do at the age of 3 or they can do at the age of 25. They will take that forward with them in life. They will learn from that, to the point where my son was, I'll never forget this day, he was 7 and the in-game in the school playground was so tag. And he was playing with his friend Charlie, and I picked him up from school, my son, and he said, Mummy, I had a weird thing happen today. And I said, what? He said, well, I was playing tag with Charlie and he fell over and he scratched his knee and he sat down on the floor and he was crying. And I looked at it and I thought, well, it's not that bad. It's just a bit of a graze. So I said, come on, Charlie, do the thing to cheer yourself up and let's just crack on. And Mummy, he looked at me. He didn't even know what that was. So I said, well, stand up, put your shoulders back, put your chin up, put a big smile on your face. And if that doesn't work, 5-star jumps. He said, okay. He stood up. He did it. He said, he looked at me, Mummy, and he said, wow, that really works. My son was like, he didn't even know it, Mummy. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant. It's going in, because, you don't really get much feedback from a 7-year-old. But, all my work had just paying off, because they are like sponges. But even now I can see when stuff happens that isn't great, he doesn't fall apart. He goes, okay, well, what can I do here? What can I do to make it better? Because I can change how I feel about this and I can find a way through. And that's because he's seen me do it time and time again in difficult circumstances. So as a parent, we can actually use it to the positive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that I love. Without question. When he first said it, was like, oh, interesting. Let's see, where's this going to go? I used to remember the saying, and that a lot of parents have ever, spoken about when they're getting involved. Kids are very resilient, and it's like, are they? Because I'm pretty sure half of them can't even spell it to some of the ages that they are.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But what I think in that comment is that in that space of people are saying resilient, not you, what you mentioned there, is that they learn to be. You learn resilience because you have to.
Yeah.
Your life path massively changes as a child. You then have to navigate very similar to what either parent is happening. So, you talked about that, handing your child over to your husband who is then with his pregnant new partner, and how painful that was for you. I remember being 9, 10 years old and every drop off at weekends being anxious. Like when a kid's are going to nursery and they kind of work out the path, the drive, and then about 100 yards before they're like, oh, I don't want to go. I remember that. I can feel that now. I can feel that, shit, I hope my mum's not on the garden doing something, because then there's this, and it goes on and on and on through everything, right? When you do your 18th and they've got to be in the same room and there's that bit of tenseness. There is that element, but
that's tough.
Interestingly, I kind of, when I've talked to my kids about those scenarios now, is like that, that's almost a moment you have to sit in a little bit. It's okay to be uncomfortable with things. You know, that is going to happen in life. You know, you're not. This isn't daisy chains and summer fields all the way through. That, you know, as I've mentioned a few times, if that was the book, no one's reading it after chapter 2 because, well, everything being rosy becomes boring. Not that heartache should be, you know, any referred to as boring, but it's, you know, there is that resilience element that feel I've gotten from divorces and moving homes and moving countries actually once, whilst was very painful and very, you know, disturbing in and I didn't for the record, I didn't go through any kind of horrific marriage breakdown. I mean, it wasn't great, right? There was arguments. You could sense,
it's always going to be.
sense the atmosphere, but there wasn't any, you know, there was no abuse or anything like that to in any way, shape or form in either of the marriages that I saw break down. But it was, you know, hard. But I do remember kind of having to manage things that I'd never been prepared to manage. You know, a child, when they get dropped off at their other parent's house, if they're not in a divorced or a divorced parents, never have to think about that.
Yeah.
When you're having a 18th, 21st, or getting married.
Yeah.
I got married at the age of 30. Shit, where's my dad going to sit? Where's my mum going to sit?
Yeah.
You know, you got to manage that. That doesn't happen, thankfully, for quite a lot of people. So there is that. I've learned that resilience. I had one of the things here. How can people going through a divorce, a separation, what's the best way for them to support children? What's the best way to maybe expose them, right? What's the kind of headlines that you give to them? Because to your point at the start, you not only have you got to manage you and your headspace and your heartbreak and your sobbing snotty nose on the bathroom floor, as you mentioned, but if the kids are old enough, you've got to manage theirs as well. It must be incredibly difficult. Let's take your circumstance that you went through. Imagine that when your child's a little bit older, because you know, at that age, you said your son was 1.
Yeah.
So your son's not going to have an idea around that. It must be so hard to support a child feeling upset about the other partner that in your mind has caused a horrific heartache and you think they're a prick. Right, I remember, like, my dad moved to the States, and I had to go and live with my mum. Had a good relationship with mum. You know, she'd remarried. My stepfather went on to become the most influential character in my life. But when I moved in, it wasn't like that in that circumstance. But I remember being really upset and remember reflecting on it now, thinking my mum must have thought, God, your dad's a prick for what he's done.
It's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, but at the same time, she never said that. She was just really supportive about how I was feeling. That must be something that's difficult to coach and remind people to do, right?
Yeah, obviously, and it's not just you, it can be your friends and family, because everyone feels that they've been betrayed or let down in those kind of circumstances and can't understand it and are angry and upset for various reasons. There's going to be a whole raft of emotions, anger, frustration, disbelief, I think, as well, is a big one. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's difficult. And when you've got a child involved as well, you want to protect them, because obviously the child is half you and half them.
Yeah.
So if you're bad mouthing them, there's a part of the child that might start to think, well, then that's half of me is bad, or how does that work? Or feel that they can't have the relationship because they're being disloyal. And that is one of the hardest things when we're coaching, to be able to separate. And I think also the new partners being in there as well. Like, there's a lot of resentment to somebody that may have been involved in breaking up your marriage behind your back for a while, or even a new partner who hasn't been. There might be some jealousy for unresolved feelings that you might have. And these are all normal. It doesn't make you some psycho. It's normal human reaction to a really difficult situation you've been put in. You've
articulated that, though, perfectly, just so you know, from a child perspective. If you do hear it from the other, so if your mum is bad-mouthing your dad, I would feel a sense of responsibility of that. I I would feel like I'm being referred to as my dad.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember feeling that a
Really?
lot. Yeah, both sides, right?
Yeah.
Oh, your mum is, oh, your dad is,
Yeah.
would be, that's a reflection on me.
And this is the thing, we've got to process our own emotions outside and our feelings away from the child, because we're not drawing the child into your dad's done this, your mum's saying this, your mum's that, your dad's this. That's not healthy for a child to be part of that. And ultimately it's difficult. So the healthy dynamic is there's going to be conflict, there's going to be upset, you're going to have arguments, right? Because when you separate lives, you're going to see the worst of anyone. It doesn't mean you're ultimately bad people, and you can probably get through it with some sort of taking a bit of a break and a breather and focusing on the long run. Because ultimately in a healthy dynamic, when you break down that relationship, you both understand there's a compromise to be made at some point. Whereas when you're breaking down, when you're coming out of a toxic, unhealthy or abusive relationship, the word compromise is not on the table for the abuser. It's not. It's total annihilation and causing maximum pain and suffering at any cost, emotional, financial, the children's, it doesn't matter. They will do whatever it takes. And that's why post-separation abuse is such a big challenge. People, it was said to me, yeah, you're not there anymore, so life will get better. It doesn't. Post-separation abuse is one of the biggest misunderstood issues we have globally, that actually can get worse because it's now channeled through the children, the money, the living arrangements, pickups and drop-offs. So that can become a real challenge. But I think going back to your point on a child learning resilience, you learned that unguided. You learned that because you were put in those situations and you were having to figure it out for yourself. And like you said, your friends at school hadn't experienced that. So it wasn't like you could chat to your mate about it. And I think that's where conscious parenting comes in, when we're stepping into the children's situation and giving them some support and a toolkit of coping mechanisms for how to cope when I'm not around and you're going through those maybe transitions. Because for anyone going from one house to another, if you and your wife went off to stay with friends for a week, there'd be a transition period where you're a bit like, oh, how does this going to work? What's the dynamic in this household? Okay, now I'm relaxed and it's a bit easier. And then you come up and you move back again and you're back in a different dynamic. So going between parents' houses can be quite a tricky change, especially if one of them is toxic, because when you're there, you probably can't be your true self. You're performing in a way for what does that parent need to see and hear from me so this goes well. So I stay in their good books, and then you come back to the safer, healthy parent's house and you can be yourself. But there's that shift from one house dynamic to the other. And then God forbid you've got both parents at the same event and one of them's toxic and one of them's not, because who are you as a child in that moment? Are you the person that kind of you are for the unhealthy parent so that works, or are you your true self? It's kind of splitting their personality in a way, but you learn that unconsciously as a child to cope. There's no one telling you that. But what if there was? What if there was a parent who understood that and explained it's okay when you go to feel a little bit uncomfortable, because when we change, like for example, when we go on holiday, it takes a while to get used to that dynamic.
Yeah.
If someone
Good way
was
of looking at it.
Yeah, and if they were making it familiar with something that you know in a different context, so that it just maps out. And even just saying, you're doing a really good job with how you're coping with this, because no one's saying well done, because no one's really thinking about what they're having to cope with. But even if you don't know what they're having to cope with or how they're really doing, just giving them that praise. You did a great job today coming back from there. And I know that must have been hard. Well done. You can almost see the steam coming out of, because they're like, oh, someone's recognizing and I'm doing a good job, because they haven't got any external praise coming in because no one's really thinking about that.
Yeah. It's a hard one to navigate the kids scenario, isn't it? So I was just thinking as you were talking through that, and you mentioned what you mentioned about before, you don't get taught life skills in school. No. I guess this never got spoken about. I was just thinking then, I think I was the only kid at first at that age. I remember Mr. Hetherington was a teacher that he mentioned it in class. I was like, why have you told everybody?
Yeah.
But actually it kind of helped, because to your point, then a few people were like, are you all right?
Oh,
You know, and being
yeah.
9 sort of thing, you know, it's,
Yeah.
But outside of that, it wouldn't ever get spoken to.
I think it is one of those things where it's about shoe shifting into the children's perspective, because there's not one size fits all either. Like, you as a child be very different to my son as a child, and the dynamic with the parents and the new partners are difficult. You know, for me, handing my child over to the woman that was pregnant with my husband and been having an affair for, I don't even to this day know how long, but it was at least 6 months. I was hard. Like, did I want my son to enjoy being around her? No. I mean, for me, no, but for him, yes. For him, what's best for my child is that he goes there and he has a good time, and she's kind to him and she looks after him and she makes him feel included. That's what's important. And that's very difficult, but it's definitely possible if you go into a mindset of, I've got to do what's right for my child. I'll do anything for them. Who do I need to become? Now, you don't have to become a saint, because that's it's definitely not possible in my circumstances. I was like, this is so painful. But actually, interestingly, I developed this tool called Functionally Friendly, which I think is probably one of my favorite tools I've ever created, because I use it still to this day. I know all my clients use it, and the coaches I train love it too. Basically, it's when you have to go to an event with your ex, especially powerful if they're toxic or difficult to be around. And it's about, obviously, people worry about this. Won't be able to sleep the night before a parents' evening. They won't be able to focus. They'll be worried they're going to break down. What do they do? And again, nobody tells you what to do. Therapy doesn't tell you what to do in those situations.
No.
So I created a plan for me, because I was having to do this a lot. So what do you do if you have to show up at an event with your ex? Well, first of all, you run it like a movie in your mind and you visualize it going amazingly well. You see yourself turning up, looking confident, sounding confident, feeling confident, all working out the way you want it to go, and leaving feeling, okay, well, that went well. And you play that through your mind like a visualization process as many times as you can, because then your brain, when you get there, goes into a bit of autopilot. I know how this goes. Okay. And it's best case scenario. Then you've got to also practice taking control. A lot of my clients will go to an event and wait to go to their friends. Is he here yet? Is she here yet? Okay, well now, okay, well, are they looking? Do I go? Do I?
Is he coming over? Yeah.
Take control, and you make the first move. You go up as soon as you see them and rip the Band-Aid off and say, hey, whatever, practice what you're going to say. Nice to see you. Jimmy's over there. He's having a great time. No personal information, no sharing how you're feeling, emotions, but practice something that's child focused, child related, that you can have maybe a short conversation over. If they say anything that's what I call throwing a grenade into that conversation, it's designed to upset you, anticipate that's going to happen. Anticipate the worst case scenario that they can say, because they're probably going to try it. And if they don't, anything's a bonus on top of that. So then you've coped with that, and you have your getaway clause. Oh, I'm just going to sit with Jane over there, but nice to see you, and I'll catch you at the end, or, nice to see you, and that's it. And then you leave. So you've completely taken your control back over that situation. You've not created anything to any
Nothing's
confusion.
a surprise. You've owned it, haven't you? Yeah. To that point, you've played through that film.
Yeah, exactly. And then you walk away, and, you might break down on the way home in the car, or, if you don't have your child, or if you're, that night.
And that's
when you
okay.
But that's okay, because you've done so
bit.
well.
Yeah.
And you've been a great role model for your kid. And also, I love to throw in there, if the new partner's there, think about something that your child might have said they'd done. So, oh, thanks so much for baking the cookies with him on the weekend. He absolutely loved that. That's really kind of you. And if they're in a toxic relationship, if your ex is toxic with them, that is not the version of you they'll have heard is who you are. So you can watch the confusion and almost go, oh, yeah, there you go. So it can make it into a bit of fun as well.
But that must be challenging, right, Sarah? Because the way that film would roll out for me if I'm there and my ex-partner's with someone else, the film is I walk in, I windmill at everybody, turn the tables over, get drunk and drive home probably in a bad. That's not the problem.
No, that's not
the movie you need to play out.
That's not the constructive outcome we want to.
Yeah, but to your point, it's taking that positive step that might not feel like the thing that you immediately want to do, but just being able to A, visualize it, B, see it through, act it through if you like, and know that once you've done that, well, I can do that.
Yeah.
I have been able to manage what felt like a very difficult situation.
Absolutely. And it's growth, you know.
Yeah,
and all growth happens outside of your comfort zone. If it was comfortable, you wouldn't grow. And this is, you know, an opportunity to build that muscle. And when you've done it once, twice, it does get easier and you learn. It's not so forced. It's just, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to cope. I can do it. So yeah, absolutely.
The most recent book, I love the title. I love titles like this.
Do you?
Yeah. It's just because I always look at books like this, and you imagine reading them on holiday, and there's absolutely clear direction about what that person is reading. Screw you, watch this. How to recover from toxic relationships. You smile as you. This feels like you loved writing this. This was kind of like the right.
Yeah.
I'm coming back. Get ready. Yeah. Is that what it felt like?
Yeah. I mean, I've had challenges through the years. You know, post-separation abuse, if you have a child with someone, can be challenging. And there's been various incidents that have caused me a lot of heartache and trauma. And I think it's something that people don't really understand. But I've built my skill set and my resilience back up so that I'm not the same person I was when he left, for sure. It was a long time ago now. It was 17 years ago. But and I've helped a lot of people. I'm a lot more confident. I have a voice. And I very much speak out for victims of abuse who are dealing with difficult exes, the family court system, which is intrinsically very toxic and difficult and harming. And I have CPTSD. I struggled with that for a long time because of things I've been put through the family court system, which we go into thinking we're going to get justice. And actually, it's more of a casino than a court a lot of the time. That there are great people in there. There are great people making decisions, but there are also a lot of people that aren't understanding enough, willing or not willing, to understand what domestic abuse is and how it impacts victims. So having been through that, I had the courage then to write a book that really is very direct, as you can tell. And it's screw you to the old being the victim. Because so long we feel, and I think the family court system can help continue the feeling of being a victim, that when you come out, you're powerless. And actually you're not. You can take your power back. You can heal. You can move forward. You can navigate difficult people that are coming up, not just your ex, but maybe the teams that are representing them in your divorce case or in the child arrangement cases, so that you can get through this. And so that book is a real light a fire in your belly to take your own power back. No matter what they're saying about you or doing to you, you can get through this, and you can be a great parent. You can be a good role model for your kid, and you will come out stronger and more confident. And I've created specific tools for people dealing with challenges from a toxic ex, from the system, so that you can emotionally grab your power back and not let it destroy you and break you, which is in a lot of cases what that is designed to do, that system and that process. But, you know, there is a way through. So for me, it's super powerful. I'm very proud of it. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get a copy of it. We're going to give it away to one of the listeners of this episode. I think that'll be really helpful for some. In conclusion, a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. First one was, how are you now? You're 17 years on, right? We'd spoken previously that there is a process of going through with divorce for everybody involved in it, but it isn't something that goes away, is it? You'll everybody owns scars from multiple things. How are you now?
I look at this as one of the toughest times in my life, and it's definitely the gift that keeps on giving if you're divorcing someone that's toxic and there's children involved. But for me now, I'm proud, I think. I'm proud of my son. He's an incredible human. And for me, that's, he wouldn't be the way he was if we hadn't been through a lot of the pain that we've been through. I'm proud of the coaches that I've trained who are out there in the world. We've trained over 800 coaches in my school now.
Wow.
And they're out there helping people with the tools that I've created. And I know that makes a difference, because I hear on my Instagram and my email every day how much it helps people, which is amazing. And I'm happy. I'm happy that I have a voice. I think that's something that a lot of survivors struggle with, having a voice again. And I have a voice and I have a platform. And I'm grateful to my team and my family and my amazing friends and my followers that, we can be there as a community and support each other. It's been an amazing journey, and not one that I thought I would get into, but life propelled me there. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think it's amazing work that you've done. There's like we started at the show, right? 40% of marriages end like this, which is really sad. In conclusion, just headlines though. Somebody listening that's potentially going through it, knows somebody that's going through it, right in the heart of it. What message can you give them about what this journey is going to be like and how it's going to be okay?
Yeah, it will be okay. You will get through it, and there's ways to fast track you through it. So definitely get the help. I mean, obviously, there is the support that we offer with the coaching, the books. I have free online support groups as well. So anyone struggling, you can go on those. They're run by my accredited coaches, completely free. It's a Zoom session every week. You can jump on. You can access those from my website. So there is help, and you can get through. And actually, I know you won't see it right now if you're in the heart of it, but this can be a really positive defining moment, like my Balmoral Beach moment was, where you have your own screw you watch this moment, and you take your power back and you redefine your life on your terms. Because like you said, you may have the emotional scars from it, but they don't have to define you. It's going to be what you do about it that makes you the person you are. So you have a choice. And you can go on and be happier and more confident and turn this into a valuable life lesson, not just for you, but for any of your family and friends around you.
Sara Davison, thank you so much for joining us on the Graph podcast. It's an emotional subject, and certainly one for me. But just listening to some of the things that you'd mentioned today as techniques and processes that people go through, I know there's a lot of people that will take help from it. I hope they reach out to you and some of your coaches to get that additional support that they may need. And thanks. You're so insightful about opening up in the first instance on your story, but also some of the techniques that people can adopt in a very difficult time. And thank you for taking the time on joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ben. I've really appreciated it.
No problem.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this week's Graft. Please make sure you follow the podcast from wherever you listen or watch from so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.